Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it's been 222 years since the founders enshrined the Postal Service in Article 1 of the Constitution. I don't believe there's any other service mandated by the founders in the Constitution other than the Postal Service. That's how important they thought it was. And I hear a lot of people talk about how they believe in the Constitution. I remember, in fact, when we began the 112th Congress, we actually, and I participated in it, we read every section, pretty much, of the Constitution because of our devotion to that document. So hopefully that devotion will imbue the spirit of this markup. I listened intently to the opening statement of the chairman of this committee, and his words were heartening to hear the desire expressed for a bipartisan bill. But let's be honest, that's not what we have in front of us now. In fact, at the markup, at the subcommittee level, there was an aggressive attempt to make sure the bill was not bipartisan. Every single Democratic amendment was defeated. Even an amendment after we heard a friend on the other side of the aisle profess publicly his commitment to preserving 6-day-a-week mail delivery, he promptly voted against, nonetheless, an amendment that would have guaranteed just that. I know it was my amendment. So if we mean to have a bipartisan bill, then we've got to work across the aisle. And I know attempts were made, sincere attempts by both sides, as late as last night to do that. But let's not pretend there isn't a chasm between us that it will be very difficult to bridge. It's interesting to learn there's some 11th hour study that negates testimony we've had before this committee in the last Congress and this, that indeed there is an overpayment that's owed the Postal Service, that burdens the Postal Service, that indeed Congress has required a prepayment required of no other Federal entity, that overly burdens the Postal Service and exacerbates the red ink number, which, if corrected by this Congress, since we created the problem, would significantly ease some of the pressure and buy us some time to think about the business model of the future. What we are being presented with in this bill today is a false choice. The Postal Service is sick and ailing. That's true. Therefore, you must accept there's only one answer. Go from 6 to 5. Well, we don't necessarily agree. You have to abolish collective bargaining and eviscerate the rights, the hard-earned rights of working men and women in the Postal Service, including many, many veterans. Well, we don't agree. You're going to have to radically alter how rural mail is delivered in America. And you're going to have to change the mode of home delivery of mail in America. Well, we don't necessarily agree. We think there are alternatives that could be pursued. Several of us have introduced legislation to that effect. We even have a gratuitous provision that was added to this bill, basically to punish one whole state, Alaska. That's not the spirit of bipartisan compromise. That's not the spirit of trying to find honest common ground for solutions to problems that have to be acknowledged and that are real. I believe that there can be common ground, but I don't believe this bill does it, and I don't believe there was much of an attempt, in at least when we marked it up at the subcommittee level, to even go through the pretense of bipartisan cooperation. And so if we're going to have it, the concerns, the legitimate concerns acknowledged on this side of the aisle have to be acknowledged, it seems to me, on that side of the aisle if we're going to achieve the noble goals set out by the chairman of this committee in his heartening opening statement. With that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman.